پیروز شاه جهان سوی کوه گذر کرد با چند کس هم گروه نگه کرد هوشنگ با هوش و سنگ گرفتش یکی سنگ و شد ریز چنگ شد مار کشته ولی کن راست
از این سنگ آتش آمد بر فراز
فروغی آمد از هر دو سنگ دل سنگش از فروغ آذرنگ جهاندار پیش جهان آفرین
نیایش همی کرد و خواند آفرین
شب آمد افروخت آتش و کوه همان شاه در گرد او با گروه یکی جشن کرد آن شب و باده خورد سده نام آن جشن فرخنده کرد هوشنگ ماند این سده یادگار بسی با چون او دگر شهریار کز آباد کردن جهان شاد کرد
جهانی به نیکی از اون یاد کرد
Hello folks, welcome to today's episode. So we have something a little different today. I've already done multiple reviews of IRIAF F-14, so today we're not going to go into the very extensive history of the Iranian Tomcats and how these came to be a frontline operational airplane for the Islamic Republic of Iran or the Imperial Iranian Air Force that bought them. We're going to sidestep that very long political discussion and focus on something else. And it's a topic that is near and dear to me because this pertains to aspects of the aircraft model business that I think need to be communicated. And I also want to empower my viewers and my subscribers, which are now up to 500. So I don't know what to say this because the words really fail me at this, but I'm immensely grateful for the support of the channel, and I thank you all for subscribing and extending your feedback, and it's definitely appreciated. So if I were somebody who had means to give away a prize, I would. However, we live in inflationary times, and so I must express my gratitude with the clunky principle of words. So again, I thank you all for supporting the channel as you have, and I'm going to continue to make content related to 1/72nd scale models. Clearly you all like it, and As long as my supporters are on board with what I'm doing and the content I'm making, I will continue to publish accordingly. So once again, thank you all for the support, and we will shift to the matter at hand, which today is modding models. It's a bit of a weird thing to say that 6 times fast, right? But if you notice, this F-14 is not exactly what you would see if you bought this and took it out of the box. And that is by design, because I have done some changes to this F-14 model and bringing it more in line with what the actual serial 3-60401 does look like in Iranian service. So why would I do this? Why would I break out the paint and weathering and kits and all that when this is already built? And theoretically, the point of buying a 1/72nd scale model is to not have to break out the glue and the paint and the assorted minutia of that. Well, the reason has to do with just it has to do with the limitations of what manufacturers like HobbyMaster can do. And I don't mean to do this in a way that sounds pejorative or takes away from their accomplishments, because they do have to work pretty hard to make 1/72nd scale models at the price point that people like me and you can afford them. But the ability to scale production like that has consequences, just economic consequences. And the fact is, from a financial and input cost perspective, no company, not HobbyMaster, not Century, not Witty, not JC Wings, not Caliber, nobody can produce at scale a F-14 model in this level of detail while still being able to charge 130, 150 US dollars for it. It's just not possible. There's only so much detail that you can build into a model from the factory and have it be at an accessible price. I have no doubt if any of those companies wanted to make an F-14 that looked like this, they could probably do it and it would look really nice, but they might sell a single handful of them because then they'd have to charge some insanely high amount to buy it, like $250 or $300 or $400. And I'll just level with you folks right now. I'm looking at buying new models and thinking, geez, these are running up 100, 150 a pop right now. I'm triaging what I'm buying as it is at the quality levels that they're coming in at this point. If HobbyMaster or Caliber or Century Wing start cranking out releases at $200, $300 a pop, I would not be able to. Let's just say content on this channel is going to start pivoting to reviewing models I have already got, because there's no way financially that's going to be a sustainable participation level for me in this hobby. And I suspect that's the case for most of you all out there watching this too. So something has to give. Economically, you can't have infinite resources, right? And that's basically the situation here. HobbyMaster cannot afford to make an F-14 that looks like this and still be able to charge $150, $200 while sustaining a business. So if, at some point as a collectors, I would say we collectively need to just acknowledge economic reality and understand that, hey, at some point, there are details that they probably want to do, but they can't do because you can't mass produce it. Or if you do mass produce it, it's going to drive the price unacceptably high. So with what's happening economically since COVID, with higher prices for input goods, shipping disruptions, inflation, higher taxes, economic disruptions from things like Brexit and all those sorts of things, you've got all these conditions that are driving the prices of these things higher even now. And some of the used market ones are just stupid expensive. I remember buying my black T-38, my 1/72nd scale Holloman T-38 for $80 new. I saw that same model on sale on eBay a couple of days ago, just incidentally, because I was looking for HobbyMaster's T-38C release lately, and that same model is going for $244 new. Like, geez, if you had jumped in a time machine and told me a T-38 would sell for $244 on eBay, I would think you're out of your flipping mind. But here we are. That's the nature of where things are here. And again, building this level of detail into the model from the beginning is probably just not economically viable. And as such, if you're somebody who likes some of the finer details like me, you're going to have to pick up some Tamiya weathering kit and some applicators and some paint and some Q-tips and get to it, you know. And that's what I'm going to try to walk you all through here, how I do this. So first thing I do is I will do research, and this is probably the hardest phase of the project. It took me about 9 hours start to finish to get this done, and about 4 hours of that was me combing sources to get photos of this airplane in real life. And that was what my starting point was. So this is going to be easier or harder depending on the nature of your airplane. If you're looking at, say, a European Typhoon, Eurofighter Typhoon from a deployment last year, you're probably going to be in good shape because there will be press photos, there will be media, there will be Royal Air Force publications about the Typhoon deployment, and there'll be details. And even if you don't necessarily get the exact airplane, maybe in an article or two linked to it, you find something that does mention the model you have, and then you can use that for your template photo. But for some stuff, it's a lot harder. And this is Islamic Republic of Iran F-14 is a great example of that, because I lucked out. Somebody took a picture of this airplane, this exact serial number, 3-6041, in 2019, which gave me the inspiration and a template to make this model look like that one. And that's fortunate, because Iran is not one of those places where they have lots of media and press coverage of their military assets. That's just not the way they do it over there. And it's part and parcel of collecting models from different countries. The US, Britain, Europe, a lot of places, Asia, Japan, a lot of countries are not shy about showing off their military hardware. But then you got countries like Russia, Iran, Iraq, Middle East, a lot of places where if you're making a realistic model of, say, a Libyan MiG-23, you're going to have a tough time finding information about that. And you're going to have an even tougher time finding info on a specific serial number, because those are not countries which believe in freedom of the press. So this step is probably the hardest one for most of us, having to sit down at a computer screen or a tablet or a library maybe to try to get photos of an airplane that you order the model of and might want to spiff up a bit. But it's crucial, because if you get this wrong, you might do a lot of work to find out that actually no, that particular serial number of your 1/72nd scale model was not deployed in Theater X like a picture you used said. It was, kept at home station and trimmed and polished and showed off for the VIPs, and it never got any grime on it. And then that's just not going to be a good situation to be in after you've changed all the stuff in the model. So the research is probably the most important piece. And what you'll want to do is you'll want to look up some sort of identification number of the airplane. In the F-14's case here, you've got 3-6041 on the tail, as well as in Persian insignia on the front. Iranian airplanes traditionally have 3 designating fighter, and 6041, I believe, is a carryover from, that's actually assigned by the Iranians when they took delivery from the U.S. Navy. The U.S. Navy serial number is a different number. That is 160339. That's the bureau number, and some of you, of course, are very familiar with that. So each reference of model and each airplane it's based on has a different serial number, methodology, and format. So you'll want to dig into that for the individual model that you have. I can't, unfortunately, label all of them for you, because then this would be a 10-hour-long video. So European countries use different serial numbers. French companies use different serial numbers. Asian and Russian. Oh, the Russian stuff is even, it's a mess, because those airplanes have like 3 serial numbers, because the Soviets were trying to be cute back in the day when they built them. So there's a serial number that's on the airplane, but it's hidden somewhere. There's a serial number that's written down in the books, but it's not the same serial number as what's on the airplane. And then there's a BORT number, or a 2 or 3 digit number on the nose, but that one is changed around based on whatever the unit that owns the airplane feels like doing. So tracking down whether an SU-27 with the insignia of Blue 100 is actually the same airplane as a Blue 100 that you might have in your collection, you can't assume that. You got to do some homework, and it's a pain. So, it's just different airplanes have different challenges in that regard. If you're doing, say, a weathering job on a U.S. Navy F-14 that's in like a cruise video on YouTube, well, then, you're going to have a much easier time doing that. So, research, and don't be afraid to go to a library and look up print sources. That's generally where some of the stuff you'll find on older airplanes definitely applies, like stuff made in the 50s and before. World War II, you're probably not going to find stuff about a period correct World War II airplane on YouTube, because you're going to have to go to a library or a bookstore and do some digging the old-fashioned Indiana Jones way. So first step, most crucial, research. So then once you've researched it, you'll have an idea of what the airplane looks like at the time you want to mod it. You also make sure your weapons are consistent too. So like if I wanted to model an F-14 made in 1972, that's going to have a different AIM-7 and AIM-9 set than an F-14 that I'm modeling after 2002. So just bear in mind that time and weapon configurations are going to change. So when you're doing your research, you'll hopefully take note of that. And then once the template photo or video or media or print source is identified, what I'll do next is I will start with any paint work that needs to happen. So like, for example, on this F-14, the Iranian F-14s have some fading on the radome up here because they're parked in the hot Iranian sun for 50 years, and I don't think they have the equipment to get brand new premium painted radomes, so they have to, it looks like, reuse the ones they have, which means when they repaint them, the paint tends to wear off pretty easily, and then you get kind of this effect where the bottom is okay, and then you get the top where it's all copper and worn, and then you have the bare metal, or the bare fiberglass of the material showing through. And this is an example of the paint work that I'll actually do. This is copper that I've applied, as well as some titanium, titanium that I've done there. And then any paint on the slats are done here as well. The Iranians, oddly enough, they don't paint their slats silver. They don't leave them silver. The U.S. Navy, and I found out something interesting. The U.S. Navy left their F-14 leading edge slats unpainted because they found that when they did use paint, it just chipped away and wore off anyway. So they just put a lot of oil on the leading edge of the surface, and the maintainers and plane captains just kept an eye on it to prevent corrosion. The Iranians, being that they fly them off of land bases, don't have to worry about corrosion as much. So they've painted their leading edge slats air superiority blue, which is a departure from how this model comes out of the box, because HobbyMaster kept the same bare leading edge silver that you find on US Navy F-14s, which is of course not correct on this. So I painted that air superiority blue. I also did that for the leading edge of the tailplanes. So the tailplanes here also have leading air superiority blue done where appropriate. And then after doing the paint work, I will then move on to the to any of the weathering. So this airplane is in the desert, right? So a lot of hot sun, and what does the hot sun do to paint? It fades. So based on the template photo, I weathered, or I should say I faded the top and the outer parts of the rudders, as well as the inner parts, the fuselage here, and the same parts on this side. But you'll notice I left the pylons here and the underside of the model of here and here unweathered, because these are parts that are covered by other components. So there's no sun fade on the bottom of the airplane, because obviously the sun doesn't really look at that part, right? So only the parts that are exposed to direct sunlight are going to fade. So I was able to weather just those parts of the airplane, which is something that you can do when you're making modifications to your own model, but is not something that a mass producer like HobbyMaster can easily do. Once the weathering's done, then on this case, I applied the Tamiya weathering on the entryways here on the side of the fuselage, because this is the part of the F-14 where the crew would come up here. They would undo the ladder. Ladder comes out there. Then they climb onto the airplane. And these spots here are grab holds. So the crew member would then grab the foothold there, come up, pilot would go in there, and then the Rio would then step over here on this third step and then move up here and then come on to the leading edge of the intake and then step into their seat there. So this is the part of the airplane that you'll generally see on F-14s that's fairly worn. This is the part where you'll see a lot of wear and fading and some weathering, and that's what I did there. I also applied some weathering to the landing gear. So if you notice the landing gear, forward landing gear there, and the oleo and the strut, and then as well as the connecting aft strut there, as well as the landing gear and the tire there, that is all weathered. Just again in accordance with what the airplane actually looked like in that template photo. And then once that's all done, then I will do changes to the weapons if necessary. So I removed the AIM-7s that came on the model, and then I made it so that I could take these off. The same goes for the AIM-7 on the other side. I did this because the F-14s in Iranian service generally don't seem to carry a full payload of weapons. Generally, you see them either completely naked or they're carrying 2 AIM-7s and 2 AIM-9s. So that's the setup that I like to do here. And I also painted the pylon here white because on this F-14 it looked like, as well as some other ones, I noticed the upper pylon would be air superiority blue, but the bottom part, which connects to the AIM-7, is painted white. And I suspect that's because they never really repainted them from the days when the Shah ran the country. So those are the changes that I did. Actually, one more I should mention. The leading edges of the intakes are also painted silver in accordance with what you would see on the actual F-14s. So those are the changes that I did on this model, and I think they came out pretty nicely in person. I know on video it looks a bit, it doesn't look quite like there's a lot of differences, but when you start with the shiny, beautiful, clean model and you make it look like this, it's a lot of work, at least for me. So hopefully that helped you folks out with considering mod projects for your airplanes. If you're thinking about taking some weathering or some paint to your particular 1/72 scale diecast models, don't be afraid to do that. Do be careful. Obviously, you don't want to ruin a $150 or so model, which is why I'm making this video. So that way I can show you all some tips and tricks, and that way when you're thinking about maybe changing one of yours, you'll have an idea of what to do and where to start. So let me know in the comments if you thought this project video was helpful. Hopefully you all found it useful in your particular collections, or if you're thinking about modifying or painting one of your models or weathering it or what have you. And I'd be curious to hear what some of your projects are. Those of you that have done this before in your models or are doing it now, what F-14s, what Mirages, what airplanes are you weathering, and why are you putting it into that color? I really like to hear that and see that in your responses in the comments below, as well as general feedback on the videos I've done as well. You can put that in there too. So I will read it and I will respond accordingly. And thank you for watching this video to this point. Again, hopefully you'll derive some value from this project video, and hopefully you'll also like this F-14 model, and we will see you in the next installment. Thank you again for watching.